What would you do if you discovered that the place considered the most sacred and safe actually conceals humanity's darkest sins? Imagine a cold December evening in 1908, when the heavy, forged gates of an ancient Kiev monastery closed behind an imperial official who had arrived on the personal orders of Nicholas II himself. The weak light of oil lamps reflected off the snow-covered domes, and inside the thick stone walls, shadows trembled and terrible secrets were whispered. It is said that even today, if you press your ear to these walls on a quiet night, you can hear the echo of prayers mixed with the groans of those who never managed to tell their story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about other forgotten pages of history that they prefer not to talk about in textbooks. Until recently, the archives of Kiev held an unremarkable folder with yellowed pages, marked with a simple code, case number 347, Inspection of the St. Euphrosynia Monastery, 1908. It was this folder that Anna Kovalchuk, a young historian working on her dissertation on the religious life of Tsarist Russia, stumbled upon by chance. Anna wasn't looking for sensationalism. She was simply methodically reviewing documents for her research when her attention was drawn to a dusty envelope that fell out of a stack of documents. The envelope was sealed with old sealing wax bearing the imprint of the imperial eagle, and it was marked, to be kept forever, not to be opened without the personal permission of His Imperial Majesty. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. In the silence of the archive room, which smelled of old paper and dust, this envelope seemed out of place, like a messenger from another world. Research curiosity got the better of her, and she carefully separated the seal, trying to preserve its integrity. Inside was a letter written in uneven handwriting, as if the author was writing in haste or fear. There was no signature, only the initials SM and the date, November 17th, 1908. Your Imperial Majesty, with trepidation and fear before the Lord, I dare to report the terrible atrocities taking place behind the walls of our monastery. The Father Superior, Father Seraphim, using the patronage of high-ranking officials, has turned the house of God into a place of sin and suffering. Many sisters, including the youngest novices, have become victims of his lust and cruelty. Those who tried to resist or complain disappeared without a trace or died from sudden illnesses. In the basement of the eastern wing of the monastery, there is a secret room where no one is allowed to enter. From there, strange sounds can be heard at night. I implore you, send a reliable person who can conduct an investigation without warning the church authorities. I fear that my life is in danger, but I can no longer remain silent, seeing how the holy place is being desecrated. Anna reread the letter several times, not believing her eyes. Her hands were shaking as she looked through the remaining documents in the folder. Among them was an official response from the Emperor's Chancellery, an order to conduct a secret inspection, and a brief report signed by an official for special assignments, Alexander Volkov. The report was dry and official, but between the lines, one could read the horror. Based on the results of the inspection, numerous violations of the monastic charter and Russian laws were revealed. The Father Superior, Father Seraphim Berestov, is temporarily suspended from his position pending clarification of all circumstances. The items and documents found in the Father Superior's private chambers have been seized and sealed for further investigation. It is recommended that the monastery's leadership be completely changed, and that the acceptance of new novices be temporarily suspended. But what exactly was discovered in the monastery? Why was the report so stingy on details? And where did Father Seraphim disappear to after the inspection? These questions haunted Anna. She decided to dig deeper, not suspecting that she would soon regret this decision. Anna's first step was to study the history of the monastery itself. The St. Euphrosynia Monastery was founded in the 15th century and was considered one of the strictest women's monasteries in Kiev. The monastery received generous donations from wealthy merchants and nobles, and its abbots traditionally had connections in the highest church circles. By the beginning of the 20th century, the monastery numbered about 10 nuns and novices, many of whom were from impoverished noble families or orphans placed in the care of the church. Father Seraphim, whose real name was Stepan Berestov, became the head of the monastery in 1807. According to official documents, he came from a family of clergymen and was educated at the Kiev Theological Seminary. Before becoming the Father Superior, he served in several parishes and everywhere left the most favorable impressions. His sermons attracted many parishioners, and his ability to find common ground with the authorities ensured support for the monastery. In the surviving photographs, Father Seraphim looked presentable, a tall man with a thick beard and penetrating eyes, exuding confidence and spiritual authority. Anna found newspaper clippings from that period in the city archive. The Kiev Provincial Gazette regularly wrote about Father Seraphim's charitable initiatives: a shelter for orphans at the monastery, a free canteen for the poor, and a Sunday school for children from low-income families. He was welcome in the homes of the Kiev elite and was even invited to conduct prayer services at the governor's residence. It seemed that nothing foreshadowed the scandal. However, in the personal diaries of Kiev Dr. Dmitry Korovin, which Anna discovered in the archive of the Medical University, there was a strange entry dated 1903. Today I examined a novice S. from the St. Euphrosynia Monastery. Officially, pneumonia, but there are obvious signs of beatings and other injuries, the origin of which the girl refused to explain. When I tried to question her alone, she only cried and repeated that this was a test sent to her by God. The senior nun accompanying her was extremely unhappy with my questions and hurried to take the patient away, saying that they would consult another doctor. I fear that something is wrong in this monastery, but without evidence and complaints from the victims themselves, nothing can be done. This was the first clue indicating that a dark reality was hidden behind the respectable facade of the monastery. Anna began to look for other witnesses or documents that could shed light on what was happening in the monastery. She was lucky enough to find the granddaughter of one of the nuns, Maria Petrenko, who kept letters from her grandmother, Ekaterina Solovova, who served in the monastery from 1900 to 1910. Maria lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of Kiev. She was an elderly woman with kind eyes and wrinkled hands. When Anna explained the purpose of her visit, Maria was silent for a long time, as if deciding whether to trust a stranger with family secrets. Finally, she took out a mother-of-pearl inlaid box from an old sideboard. "Grandmother didn't like to talk about the years she spent in the monastery," Maria said, opening the box. "Only before her death did she give me these letters and take my promise to keep them. She said that someday the truth should be revealed, but not in her lifetime." Inside the box were yellowed envelopes, tied with a faded ribbon. These were letters that Ekaterina wrote to her sister, but never sent. Perhaps she was afraid that they would be intercepted, or she simply couldn't bring herself to tell the truth even to a close person. In one of the letters, dated May 1908, Ekaterina wrote, "Dear Anastasia, if you only knew what hell is hidden behind these holy walls. Father Seraphim is not a servant of God, but the devil incarnate himself. He chooses the youngest and most beautiful novices for special prayers in his chambers. Those who resist are subjected to punishments, from deprivation of food to flogging. Sister Maria tried to escape last month, but she was caught and locked in a dungeon in the basement. For 3 days we heard her cries and then silence fell. We were told that she died of a fever and was quickly buried without a funeral service. Abbess Feodosia knows about everything, but she is silent. Father Seraphim keeps her in fear, threatening to reveal some sin from her youth. We are all prisoners here, but it is useless to shout. The walls are too thick, and beyond them is a world that doesn't want to hear our voices." Anna read these lines with growing horror. Ekaterina's letters painted a picture of systematic violence and intimidation. The monastery had turned into a small kingdom, where one man possessed absolute power, and the victims were completely isolated from the outside world. Their families either didn't know what was happening, or didn't want to interfere, fearing scandal and God's punishment for speaking out against the church. In the last letter, written in October 1908, Ekaterina mentioned her terrible discovery. "Yesterday, when everyone was asleep, I followed Father Seraphim and 2 of his trusted servants. They were carrying a large bundle and heading to the far end of the monastery garden, where the old, abandoned crypts are located. I hid behind the trees and saw them lower the bundle into one of the crypts. When they left, I found the courage to get closer. What I saw will never leave my nightmares. It was the body of Sister Alexandra, who disappeared a week ago, We were told that she had gone to take care of her sick mother, but I saw bruises on her neck and frozen horror in her eyes. God help us all. I know too much, and I'm afraid that I'll be next. One of the sisters, Sophia, said that she found a way to send a letter to the emperor himself. This is our last hope. This letter was dated just 1 month before the imperial inspection. Anna realized that Sophia, designated in the anonymous letter by the initials SM, had indeed been able to report the Father Superior's crimes directly to Nicholas II. But what happened next? What exactly did the imperial officials discover? And why were the results of the investigation so carefully hidden? What was found next was not indicated in any official report. Anna managed to find the personal diary of Alexander Volkov, the very official for special assignments who conducted the inspection of the monastery. The diary was kept in the private collection of his great-grandson, a history professor at Kiev University. The professor hesitated for a long time whether to show these records to outsiders, but scientific interest eventually won. Volkov's notes were written in an encrypted language, apparently for fear that the diary might fall into the wrong hands. But even through this veil, a picture emerged of the horror that the imperial official encountered within the walls of the monastery. December 20th, 1908 arrived in K to verify the information received by His Majesty. Father Superior S. greeted me with feigned cordiality, but I could see concern in his eyes. Introduced myself as a regular official from the synod, arrived for a routine inspection. S. offered to accommodate me in the guest quarters, but I insisted on staying in a hotel, citing the need to prepare reports in the evenings. December 21st, 1908, began questioning the nuns under the pretext of gathering information about the organization of monastic life. Most speak in rehearsed phrases, avoid eye contact. However, the youngest novice, only 16 years old, suddenly burst into tears during a private conversation and showed me traces of beatings on her back. She said that this was a punishment for disobedience to the Father Superior, hinted at things that are shameful to say out loud. Later, a nun, secretly approached me and handed me several letters, saying that their author was the same SM who wrote to the emperor. SM, Sofia Miloradovich, was found dead the day before my arrival. The official version is a heart attack, but ES is sure that SM was poisoned when it became known about the upcoming inspection. December 22nd, 1908 at night, secretly inspected the eastern wing of the monastery, where, according to the letter, the forbidden room is located. Indeed, I discovered a hidden door behind a bookcase in the library. Behind it is a staircase to the basement and a room with an iron door under lock and key. Had to return in the morning with gendarmes and an official warrant for a search. SS turned pale when I presented the documents with the imperial seal. He tried to protest, citing church privileges, but retreated before the threat of arrest for disobeying the imperial decree. What we found in the locked room defies description. Iron rings in the walls, chains, torture devices that would have made the inquisitors envious. But the most terrible things were the notebooks, SS's personal diaries, where he meticulously recorded his sessions with selected victims with twisted scrupulousness. It seems he considered himself some kind of purifier of souls, believed that through pain and humiliation he was bringing these unfortunates closer to God. In the corner of the room we found a locked chest. Inside were the personal belongings of the missing nuns. Locks of hair, even teeth, kept as trophies. On my order, everything was sealed for transfer to investigators. When we went upstairs, SS had already disappeared. Someone from his entourage apparently warned him, sent gendarmes to search for him, but so far without results. Questioned Abbess F, who finally admitted that she knew about SS methods, but was afraid to speak, as he was blackmailing her with compromising letters from her youth. According to her, S had patrons in the synod and among the local authorities, which ensured his impunity. December 23rd, 1908, at the direction of the nun, inspected the abandoned crypts on the edge of the monastery garden. What we found there exceeds the worst expectations. 7 bodies buried without coffins, all young women with traces of violent death. A preliminary examination by a police doctor showed that some of them had been tortured before death. According to the monastery records, all were either transferred to other monasteries or returned to their families. Drew up a list for identification and notification of relatives. Received a telegram from St. Petersburg with instructions to maintain maximum secrecy. The scandal could irreparably damage the authority of the Church. The investigation will be continued secretly, without publicity in the press. The monastery is temporarily closed to visitors and a new leadership is appointed. The surviving victims will be transferred to other monasteries after giving testimony. I am beside myself with what I have seen and heard. How could a person do such a thing in the name of God? And how many more such monsters are hiding behind holy walls throughout Russia? Volkov's records ended there. Apparently, further investigation was classified at the highest level. Anna found documents on the appointment of a new abbess and the reorganization of the monastery, but no mention of the fate of Father Seraphim or the results of the investigation of the discovered crimes. But as the old wisdom says, there is nothing secret that will not become apparent. And soon Anna stumbled upon another thread in this dark story. In the archive of the Kiev Police Department, a report from January 1909 was preserved about a strange incident in the suburbs of Kiev. The body of an unknown man was found in an abandoned house. According to the description, he was a tall man of middle age with a beard, dressed in the remnants of church vestments. The cause of death was multiple stab wounds, and the nature of the injuries indicated that the murder was committed with particular cruelty, possibly by several people. The identity of the deceased could not be established, as there were no documents on him, and the face was badly mutilated. The case remained unsolved and was soon closed due to the impossibility of establishing the circumstances of the crime. Was this a reprisal against Father Seraphim? Perhaps the relatives of the victims, having learned the truth, decided to take justice into their own hands? Or were they his former patrons, fearing exposure of their own involvement in the crimes? Or maybe the official version of the Father Superior's disappearance was just a cover for his secret execution on orders from above. These questions are most likely to remain unanswered forever. However, what happened next to the monastery and its inhabitants is partially reflected in the church archives. After the scandal, the monastery was temporarily closed for reconstruction, and when it reopened under the leadership of a new abbess, most of the former nuns were transferred to other monasteries throughout the empire. In essence, this was a dispersal of witnesses to prevent the spread of information about what had happened. Anna managed to find the great-niece of one of the novices, Victoria Rybakova, who after the events of 1908, was transferred to a monastery near Pskov. According to family tradition, Victoria suffered from nightmares for the rest of her life and was afraid of the dark. She never told details about the years she spent in the Kiev monastery, but once, in a rare moment of frankness, she told her daughter, "Fear not the dead, but the living. The most terrible demons wear human faces and speak in the name of God." An interesting fact was discovered in the medical archives of the Kiev Psychiatric Hospital. In the 1970s, an unusually large number of patients from among former nuns and novices were admitted there. The diagnoses ranged from melancholia and hysteria to religious mania, but the medical histories of many of them mentioned similar symptoms: nightmares, panic attacks at the sight of men in church vestments, attempts at self-harm. In essence, these were classic signs of what today would be called post-traumatic stress disorder. One of these patients, Nadezhda Krylova, a former nun of the St. Euphrosynia Monastery, left behind a series of drawings that have been preserved in the hospital archive as an example of the visualization of mental disorders. These drawings, made in simple pencil, depicted monastery walls, behind which distorted faces distorted by horror were visible, long corridors with many doors from which hands were drawn, and a recurring image of a tall figure in a cassock. But instead of a face, this figure had only black emptiness. On the back of one of the drawings, there was an inscription made by Nadezhda's hand. "He comes every night, says that even death will not stop him, says that I belong to him forever." By 1917, when the revolution took place, the history of the Kiev monastery had already been almost forgotten. The new government closed all the monasteries, and many archives were destroyed or scattered. The St. Euphrosynia Monastery was turned first into a warehouse, then into a prison, and in Soviet times into a museum of atheism. Strangely enough, even atheistic propaganda, which willingly revealed any church scandals, remained silent about the story of Father Seraphim. Perhaps the documents were destroyed even before the revolution, or someone in the new government also benefited from keeping this story buried. But there are things that live in the popular memory, passed down from generation to generation. Anna met with several elderly residents of the area where the monastery once stood and heard local legends. According to one of them, female voices reading prayers and heavy footsteps can still be heard in the building of the former monastery at night, although no one is there. Another legend claims that during restoration work in the 1970s, workers discovered a walled-up room in the basement, where they found strange objects and inscriptions on the walls, but all the finds were seized by the KGB, and the workers were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. Local historian Pyotr Savchenko told Anna another interesting detail. In the 1980s, when the building of the monastery housed the historical archive, employees refused to stay there after sunset. They said that whispers were heard from the walls, and the documents moved by themselves. One employee swore that she saw a tall figure in an old church vestment in the corridor, but when she called out to the stranger, he turned around, and instead of a face, he had blackness. After this incident, the woman had a nervous breakdown and quit. The authorities blamed everything on drafts and a rich imagination, but the fact remains. The staff turnover in that archive was incredible. What is it? Simple urban legends born of rumors about real crimes or something more? Anna could not answer this question, but the deeper she delved into the research, the more oddities she noticed around her. Documents that she found suddenly disappeared from the archives upon repeated requests. People who agreed to interviews at the last moment refused to speak or provided deliberately false information. And one night, she discovered that someone had been in her apartment and was looking through research materials, although the locks had not been broken. The most disturbing thing was the anonymous call that Anna received late in the evening, after a visit to the former monastery. A male voice, quiet and as if coming from afar, uttered only one phrase: "Do not disturb the dead, otherwise you will join them." Then followed a sound similar to church singing, and the connection was broken. When Anna tried to determine the source of the call, it turned out that the number was not registered in any telephone network. Perhaps it was just a prank by someone who learned about her research. But intuition told Anna that there was something more to it. She decided to visit the monastery itself, now turned into a museum and cultural center, in order to feel the atmosphere of the place where this dark story unfolded. The building of the monastery, despite numerous reconstructions, has retained its original appearance. Massive walls of gray stone, narrow windows resembling loopholes, and a central dome towering over the city. The territory was well kept, with neat paths and information signs telling about the architecture and official history of the monastery. Not a word about the events of 1908, as if they never existed. Anna joined the tour, carefully listening to the guide, a young woman enthusiastically talking about the artistic values and famous visitors of the monastery. When the group passed by the eastern wing, Anna asked, "Is it possible to see the basement rooms?" The guide's face changed for a moment. The smile became strained. "Unfortunately, the basements are closed to visitors for safety reasons," she replied too quickly. "Restoration work is being carried out there." But Anna noticed that there were no signs of construction or restoration at the entrance to the eastern wing. When the tour ended, she quietly separated from the group and returned to the place that interested her. The door to the eastern wing was locked, but there was a window next to it overlooking the courtyard. Anna approached it and looked inside. What she saw made her shudder. In the dimly lit corridor stood a tall figure in black. It was impossible to make out the face, but the silhouette resembled a priest in traditional vestments. The figure did not move, as if watching Anna. Suddenly, she raised her hand in a gesture resembling a blessing or a curse, and at the same moment there was a sharp sound. The window shutter slammed shut from a gust of wind, causing Anna to jump back. When she opened the window again, the corridor was empty. Her heart was pounding, but research excitement overcame fear. Anna went around the building and found a service entrance, which to her surprise was unlocked. Looking around and making sure that no one was watching, she slipped inside. The corridor was dark and smelled of dampness. Weak light penetrated through the small windows under the ceiling, creating a bizarre play of shadows. Anna turned on the flashlight on her phone and slowly moved forward, listening to every sound. Somewhere water was dripping, the old floorboards creaked, and from time to time indistinct rustles were heard, as if someone was moving parallel to her behind the wall. At the end of the corridor, there was a massive wooden door with iron hinges. It was ajar, and a strip of light fell from behind it. Anna carefully peeked into the gap and saw a staircase leading down into the basement. Overcoming the growing sense of anxiety, she began to descend, holding on to the damp stone wall. The basement was a spacious room with low vaulted ceilings supported by massive columns. Along the walls were shelves with boxes and folders, apparently part of the archive. In the center of the room was an old table littered with papers and several chairs, as if someone had recently worked here and suddenly left. Anna walked over to the table and looked at the papers. They were copies of old documents, some of which she had already seen in the city archive. But among them was a photograph that she had not encountered before. A group photo of nuns and clergy dated 1907. In the center stood a tall, bearded man in rich vestments, undoubtedly Father Seraphim. His gaze, directed straight at the camera, was strangely attractive and at the same time frightening. The nuns surrounding him looked tense. Some were looking away, as if avoiding contact with the photographer. Suddenly, Anna felt that the room had become colder. She looked up from the photograph and froze. In the far corner of the basement, in one of the columns, stood the very figure that she had seen through the window. Now Anna could see the details. It was indeed a priest in old vestments, with a gray beard and piercing eyes, but there was something wrong with his appearance, inhuman, as if an image that was slightly out of focus. "Who are you?" Anna whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. The figure did not answer, but took a step forward, and in the dim light, Anna saw that the floor under it remained dry. At the time, the entire basement was covered in a thin layer of water. This couldn't have been a person. In a panic, Anna rushed to the stairs, but tripped over a box of documents. As she fell, she dropped her phone, and its light went out, plunging the basement into complete darkness. When she finally found the phone and turned on the flashlight, the figure of the priest had vanished. But on the table where the photograph had been lying, there was now an old leather-bound diary that hadn't been there before. With trembling hands, Anna picked up the diary. The first page read, "Personal Diary of Father Seraphim Berestov. Started January 1st, 1900. The handwriting was the same as in the records she had found in the archive. Small, neat, with a characteristic slant. But this diary hadn't been mentioned in any of the known documents of the investigation. Turning the pages, Anna found entries that confirmed all her worst suspicions. Detailed descriptions of corrective procedures for disobedient nuns, lists of victims with dates and results, and reflections on the necessity of purifying souls through suffering. Gradually, the entries became more and more incoherent, shifting from religious fanaticism to outright madness. In the last entries, dated December 1908, Seraphim wrote about dark forces that were speaking to him and demanding new souls. He mentioned a certain ritual that was supposed to give him power over life and death and the ability to exist outside the flesh. The last entry was dated December 22nd, 1908, the day of the imperial inspection. "They have come for me, but it is too late. The ritual is complete. Now I am free from the limitations of the flesh. These walls have become my home and my prison. I will wait, watch, and collect new souls, and those who dare disturb my peace will know the true meaning of eternal torment." Anna slammed the diary shut, feeling icy horror spread through her body. This couldn't be true. She was dealing either with someone's sick fantasy or with something that was beyond rational explanation. Suddenly, the flashlight began to flicker, and then went out completely, leaving her in absolute darkness. Anna heard a rustling sound. Someone, or something, was moving toward her. Then came a voice, quiet and hoarse, as if unused for many years. "You have found what you were looking for. Now you know the truth, but knowledge has its price." Anna ran, stumbling over shelves and knocking over boxes of documents. By some miracle, she found the stairs and ran out of the basement without looking back. Only when she was outside under the bright sun did she stop to catch her breath. The diary was still in her hands, the only proof that what had happened wasn't a hallucination. That same evening, Anna received a strange call from the director of the museum located in the former monastery building. He said that security had discovered on surveillance cameras that she had entered a restricted area and demanded that she return the stolen materials. When she asked what materials he was talking about, the director directly named Father Seraphim's diary. But how could he know about it if the diary had appeared as if from nowhere in an empty basement? This document is of historical value and belongs to the museum, the director insisted. If you return it immediately, we will not contact the police. Anna agreed to meet him the next day but didn't intend to part with the diary until she had made a copy. She spent all night photographing each page and deciphering the most important entries. The more she read, the stronger her conviction became that Father Seraphim was not just a sadist and murderer hiding behind a mask of righteousness. He was obsessed with the idea of achieving immortality through a certain dark ritual for which he used his victims. In the last entries, he referred to ancient texts he had found in the monastery library, apocryphal writings declared heretical by the church and supposedly destroyed. But, according to Seraphim, several copies had survived, hidden by monks many centuries ago. These texts described a ritual that allowed the soul to remain attached to a certain place after the death of the body, preserving consciousness and the ability to influence the material world. The last entry contained a fragment of this ritual and a mention that its completion required a final sacrifice. The performer himself had to die a violent death in the place to which he wanted to bind his soul. Was the terrible death of Father Seraphim, found with many stab wounds, an accident, revenge, or part of his plan? In the morning, before meeting with the director of the museum, Anna decided to talk to Professor Kowalski, a specialist in medieval religious cults. Showing him copies of the pages from the diary, she asked, "Could the ritual described have any real basis, or is it just the product of a sick imagination?" The professor studied the texts for a long time before answering. What is described here has parallels in some Gnostic teachings that were declared heretical by the Church back in the early Middle Ages. The idea that through a special ritual and a certain number of sacrifices, one can achieve immortality of the soul is found in several forbidden texts. Of course, from a scientific point of view, it's all superstition. But he fell silent, as if hesitant to continue. "But," Anna prompted him, "in my practice, there have been several cases that are difficult to explain rationally," the professor said quietly. "Places where mass murders or regular ritual sacrifices took place sometimes retain, let's call it, an energetic imprint. People sensitive to such things may experience inexplicable fear there, see or hear things that aren't there. Modern science calls this mass hallucinations or suggestion, but the ancients believed that in such places the boundary between worlds becomes thinner." He returned Anna's papers and looked at her carefully. "I would advise you to stop this investigation. Some secrets are best left buried." But Anna couldn't stop. She felt that she had delved too deeply into the story and now had to go to the end to find answers to all the questions. She went to the museum to meet with the director, deciding to return the original diary but keeping the copies. The director, Igor Petrovich Sokolov, turned out to be an elderly man with a military bearing and a piercing gaze. He received Anna in his office, located in the very eastern wing of the monastery that had once been the personal territory of Father Seraphim. "You showed unacceptable initiative by entering a restricted area," he said sternly, taking the diary. "This document is part of research that we have been conducting for several years. All materials relating to the history of the monastery must be carefully checked before publication to avoid sensational distortions." "Are you saying that you knew about Father Seraphim's crimes and hid this information?" Anna asked directly. The director frowned. "We're not hiding anything, we're studying. There's a difference between objective historical research and cheap horror stories for the public. The events of 1908 are a dark page in the history of the monastery, but they must be presented in the correct context." "And what context do you consider correct for serial murders and torture?" Anna persisted. Sokolov looked at her carefully. "You're not just interested in this story. You have a personal reason. Anna wanted to object but suddenly realized that he was right. From the very beginning, something more than simple scientific curiosity had drawn her to this investigation. She remembered how, as a child, her grandmother had told her a strange family story about her great-grandmother, who was supposedly a nun in a Kiev monastery and had died under mysterious circumstances. At the time, Anna hadn't paid much attention to it, considering the story one of many family legends. Perhaps, she said slowly, my great-grandmother, Maria Kovalchuk, may have been a novice in this monastery in the early 20th century. The director's face changed. He stood up and went to a cabinet, took out a thin folder and handed it to Anna. Look! In the folder was a list of nuns and novices of the St. Euphrosynia Monastery for 1900 to 1910. And there, indeed, was the name of Maria Kovalchuk, who had entered the monastery in 1906. Next to her name was a note that she had left, and in the reason column, it was simply written, died of illness, 1908. She was one of them, the director said quietly. One of those who were found in the crypts. According to official documents, they all died of illness or left the monastery. The truth was revealed only during the imperial inspection. Anna felt a lump rising in her throat. All this time, she had been investigating a story that was part of her own family tragedy, without suspecting it. Suddenly, everything fell into place. Both the inexplicable attraction to this topic and the strange coincidences and even the figure of the priest that she had seen in the basement. Perhaps, on some deep level, she had always known that she had to uncover this secret, had to restore justice for those who had been forgotten by history. Why did you decide to show me this? She asked the director. Because you deserve to know the truth, he replied, and because you are possibly the only person who can help us finish this story. He told Anna that the museum was indeed conducting research into the events of 1908, but was facing inexplicable obstacles. Documents were disappearing, records were being erased, people working on the topic were suddenly giving up their work or were experiencing strange accidents. Inexplicable phenomena were happening in the building, objects were moving, voices were being heard, and at night many employees refused to stay alone, especially in the Eastern Wing. We believe that the spirit of Father Seraphim is still here, Sokolov said, lowering his voice, and he doesn't want the truth to come out. But perhaps, if a descendant of one of his victims completes the investigation, we can finally free the souls of those who suffered here. Anna didn't know whether to believe in a supernatural explanation or look for rational reasons for what was happening, but she agreed to help the museum with the investigation, gaining access to all the materials and the opportunity to work in the archive, including the basement where she had found the diary. Over the next few weeks, Anna delved into the study of all available documents related to the monastery and Father Seraphim. She discovered that before becoming the abbot, he had served in several other parishes, and strange events had occurred everywhere. The disappearance of young women, unexplained deaths, rumors of abuse of novices. But each time, the church authorities simply transferred him to a new place, covering up the scandals. An even more disturbing discovery was information about Seraphim's origins. It turned out that he was not a hereditary clergyman, as claimed in the official biography. Before taking holy orders, he was known as Stepan Berestov, the son of a cemetery caretaker from a small village near Poltava. According to local legends, young Stepan spent a lot of time among the graves and had a strange habit of talking to the dead. At the age of 16, he suddenly left the village after several girls went missing, and their bodies were later found with traces of ritual killings. There was no direct evidence of his involvement, but the coincidence was too obvious. Then Anna discovered a shocking fact. Father Seraphim was not the only one who practiced dark rituals within the walls of religious institutions. The archives of the Synod contained secret documents about an entire network of clergymen associated with heretical cults masquerading as traditional orthodoxy. They called themselves the Brotherhood of the True Path and believed that the official church had distorted the teachings of Christ, concealing its true essence. Allegedly, the path to divinity lay through the testing of the flesh and the absorption of the souls of those who were worthy of being sacrificed. This sinister brotherhood had existed since the mid-15th century, operating in the shadow of the official church. Its members held various positions in the church hierarchy and covered for each other. After the scandal with the St. Euphrosynia Monastery, the Synod conducted a secret investigation and discovered several other centers of the cult in different dioceses. But instead of making the matter public, the church authorities decided to quietly get rid of the heretics, fearing that a public scandal would irreparably damage the reputation of the church. Most of the members of the Brotherhood were arrested and sent to remote monasteries under strict supervision, where they spent the rest of their lives in isolation. Some, including Father Seraphim, disappeared before they could be apprehended. And although it was officially believed that they had fled abroad, Anna began to suspect that the reality could be much more sinister. What if these people really believed in the possibility of immortality through dark rituals? What if they deliberately sought a violent death in places of their power so that their souls would remain attached to those places? It sounded like madness, but it explained the strange phenomena observed in the former monastery and other similar places. In his diary, Father Seraphim wrote about a final ritual that required 13 sacrifices. According to the results of the exhumation, only 7 bodies were found in the monastery crypts. But what if there were others that no one knew about? Anna decided to thoroughly inspect the territory of the monastery, especially those places that could be associated with the ritual practice of the cult. With the help of old plans of the building, she discovered that under the monastery there was a whole network of underground passages and rooms, some of which had been walled up back in the 18th century. One of the passages led from the abbot's private quarters to a small chapel on the edge of the monastery garden, long abandoned and overgrown with ivy. Having obtained permission from the director of the museum, Anna organized a small archaeological expedition. Under the floor of the chapel, they discovered the entrance to an underground crypt that was not marked on any of the known plans. And there, in niches carved into the walls, they found 6 more skeletons, carefully arranged in a certain order that formed a certain symbol. They all belonged to young women, and all the skulls had strange symbols engraved on them. Experts confirmed that the burial dated back to the early 20th century, and that these women were probably the last victims of Father Seraphim before his disappearance. 13 victims, the exact number mentioned in his diary as necessary for the final ritual. The find caused a great resonance in scientific circles and attracted media attention. The story of the Kiev Monastery and its sinister abbot finally became public knowledge. The remains of the victims were identified and reburied according to Christian rites, and a memorial was erected on the territory of the former monastery in memory of the dead. It seemed that the story was over. Justice had triumphed, albeit more than a century after the tragic events. But for Anna, everything was not so simple. She couldn't shake the feeling that something remained unfinished, that some important detail had escaped her attention. And she was right. During the final stage of work in the crypt, one of the archaeologists discovered a hiding place in the altar area. It contained a small lead box with a manuscript in Old Church Slavonic, the very apocryphal text that Father Seraphim had used for his rituals. The document was handed over to experts for study, and Anna gained access to its content. The text described not only the ritual of binding the soul to a place after death, but also a way to free such souls, a kind of exorcism rite specific to this type of entity. According to the manuscript, a soul held by a dark ritual can only be freed if a descendant of one of the victims performs a special ceremony in the very place where the final ritual was performed. Anna understood that from a scientific point of view, all this was superstition that had no rational explanation. But she also couldn't ignore her personal experience. The vision of Father Seraphim's figure, the strange phenomena in the monastery, the inexplicable appearance of the diary, and all the coincidences that had led her to this investigation. If there was even the slightest chance of freeing the souls of the victims and laying the spirit of their tormentor to rest, wasn't it worth a try? After much thought, she made up her mind. On the night of the full moon, as indicated in the manuscript, Anna came to the crypt under the chapel. She brought with her personal belongings of her great-great-grandmother that had been preserved in the family, a cross and a lock of hair. In the crypt, she placed 13 candles around the perimeter of the room, symbolizing the souls of the victims, and one in the center for the soul of the perpetrator. Reading the ancient words from the manuscript, Anna felt the air around her thicken, making it harder to breathe. The candles began to flicker, although there was no draft. When she uttered the last words of the ritual, The central candle suddenly flared up, a bright flame rising almost to the ceiling, and then went out, as if it had been blown out by invisible lips. At the same moment, Anna felt a presence. Turning around, she saw their translucent figures, 13 women standing around her. Their faces were sad but calm. Among them, Anna recognized her great-great-grandmother. The same eyes, the same oval face as in the old family photograph. The ghost nodded slightly to her, and Anna felt a strange peace, as if she had received a blessing. The figures began to melt, dissolving into the air like morning mist in the rays of the sun. The last to disappear was the great-great-grandmother, and it seemed to Anna that she heard a quiet whisper, "Thank you." When all the ghosts had disappeared, another figure emerged from the dark corner of the crypt, a tall man in ecclesiastical robes. But now his image was distorted, like a crumbling mask under which something else was showing. A non-human being that had once been Father Seraphim. The creature let out an inarticulate howl full of rage and pain and rushed toward Anna, but didn't manage to reach her. An invisible force held him in place like chains. "They were mine forever. What have you done?" His voice sounded like metal scraping against glass. "They were never yours," Anna replied firmly. "You stole their lives, but you couldn't hold their souls. Now it's your turn to go." With these words, she lit the central candle from one of the 13 still burning around the perimeter. The flame soared up again, but this time engulfed Seraphim's figure. The creature writhed and screamed, his appearance changing from human to something monstrous and back, until he finally crumbled into black ash, which immediately scattered, leaving no trace. When it was all over, Anna felt a strange lightness, as if a huge weight, the existence of which she hadn't even suspected, had fallen from her shoulders. The crypt became brighter, although the source of light was not obvious. Anna gathered her things and took one last look at the ancient dungeon that had witnessed so much suffering and evil. Now it seemed just an old stone crypt, empty and lifeless, but somehow cleansed. Coming to the surface, she saw the director of the museum waiting for her at the entrance to the chapel. From his face, Anna understood that he knew everything and expected exactly this outcome. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "It's calmer here." Anna nodded. Indeed, the entire territory of the former monastery seemed to have been transformed. The oppressive feeling that had been felt even on the sunniest day had disappeared. The air became cleaner, and the sounds clearer. "What are you going to do with this place now?" she asked. "What we should have done a long time ago," Sokolov replied. "We'll tell the whole truth. We'll create a real museum dedicated not only to architecture and art but also to the dark pages of history. People should know what happened behind these walls, not for sensation, but as a warning, to remember that the most terrible monsters wear human faces and speak the right words." The story of the Kiev Monastery and its sinister abbot became one of the most famous in urban folklore. Tourists come to the museum, listen to the tour, take pictures at the memorial to the victims, and leave, taking with them a chilling story about a man who betrayed everything he should have believed in and about the women whose lives he destroyed. But there is another side to this story, about a descendant who, after a century, completed the circle, freeing the souls of the innocent and sending the tormentor where he belonged. This story is told in whispers. Not everyone believes in it, but sometimes, on especially quiet nights, visitors to the museum say that they see 13 luminous silhouettes peacefully watching the living from the corners of the old halls. They don't frighten or harm. They just remind us that some secrets are revealed only when someone is willing to hear the voices of the past. As for Anna, she finished her dissertation, including in it part of the materials about the St. Euphrosynia Monastery, but leaving much beyond the scope of academic work. There are things that cannot be explained in the language of science and experiences that cannot be squeezed into the framework of historical research. Sometimes it seems to her that she sees her great-grandmother in a dream, a young woman in monastic robes, with eyes full of calm wisdom. She doesn't say anything, just looks with love and gratitude. And Anna knows that she made the right choice by uncovering this story and ending it in this way. But there always remains the question: was Father Seraphim the only one? How many more similar places exist in the world? How many dark souls are still attached to the places of their crimes, waiting for liberation or new victims? And how many ancient manuscripts with forgotten rituals are kept in dusty archives, ready to reveal their secrets to those who dare to seek them? Perhaps some secrets are really better left buried, but the story of the St. Euphrosynia Monastery reminds us that the truth, no matter how terrible it may be, ultimately brings liberation to both the living and the dead. And behind the walls of other ancient buildings, in the shadow of old crypts, and in the depths of abandoned basements, perhaps other voices are already whispering, waiting for someone to come and hear their story. And somewhere in the world, there are other researchers like Anna who, without even suspecting it, are connected to the dark secrets of the past by invisible threads of fate. Sooner or later, these threads will tighten, drawing them to the places of ancient crimes, so that another forgotten story may be told, another injustice rectified, another soul find peace. For, as the old wisdom says, the dead do not leave until they are heard, and sometimes only the living can help them find their way home.